I know what you're thinking. Isn't that what clocks are supposed to do? Tick? Sure, they're supposed to tick when they aren't broken. Considering that I've bashed a goddamn thing to bits with a hammer, I'm pretty sure it shouldn't be making any noise at all. It's weird because even when I pluck my ears, I can still hear it. It's like the sound of the back and forth monotony of a ticking clock lives inside my brain. Can you hear it? I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. The constant ticking is driving me mad, and at this point I do anything to just make it stop. I started writing this to avoid the scratching. The sound of the clock must have awakened some nervous tick buried inside me. I've carved into the flesh of my arm with my fingernails, the skin still lodged underneath them. It's okay if you don't believe me. My wife Sherry didn't either. It's not making any sound, Brian. Leave the clock alone, you're crazy. The only thing worse than that damn clock ticking was the sound of a pestering voice. It was months since I felt any emotion towards her, aside from resentment. It's her own damn fault. She's the reason we lost Ruth. If I was there when it happened, I'm sure I could have saved her. After Ruth died, I couldn't bring myself to leave the house anymore. Every time I walk past the bathroom, I can hear a voice call out to me, like she's still struggling to escape the water rapidly filling the tub. I can feel her pain, the helplessness of drowning and the abandonment she must have felt when her mother never came to save her. Ruth was so young, so full of wonder, so much life left to live. The day she died was when I first started hearing the ticking. At first I wrote it off to my watch. Maybe something was broken inside of it, or maybe I was paying more attention to it. Either way, I was wrong. Months passed, and the ticking hadn't stopped. I removed all the clocks in the house, aside from the grandfather clock in the hallway. It's been passed down for generations in my family, and I couldn't bring myself to part with it. It was my grandfather's favorite. He had many clocks, but this one was special to him. I remember as a child watching him stare at the clock, and when it struck a new hour, he'd let out a sigh and a slight smile. My father thought he was crazy, obsessing over a clock like that, but I think I understand why my grandfather was so relieved. Every time the hour changed, the chime was so loud that for a second he couldn't hear the ticking. One day my father had enough of my grandfather's obsession with the clock and decided to remove it from the house. My grandfather didn't take it so well. He screamed at my father that if he didn't watch the clock, that death would show up and take him. Most of the household thought those to be the ramblings of an old man whose brain was in the deep stages of dementia. But I believed him. I saw the fear in his eyes, the tears gathering in the corners, the anxiety building inside of him. The next morning, my grandmother woke up to her husband face down on the floor in a pool of his own blood. The investigators ruled it as a suicide. My family believed it was his way of protecting them from his debilitating disease. I say otherwise. I believe that death had finally come to visit my grandfather, the clock being the only thing keeping the spirit at bay. They say that when a broken clock continues to tick, that death is on its way. If that's true, you should know this house well. I'm not sure why it's taking so long this time. He's taken everything from this house. First, my grandfather. Then, Ruth. Then Sherry. And hopefully soon, me.
Tick-tock. Yes, today we unravel the tapestry of madness, grief, and the ceaseless ticking of time. A tale where mortality is but a thin veil, easily torn by the relentless march of the clock's hand. Here we meet Brian, a man haunted by the suffocating death of his daughter Ruth and a festering resentment towards his wife Sherry, descending into an obsession with an old family heirloom. A grandfather clock, a relic that once held sway over his grandfather's fragile mind. The ticking, oh, the ceaseless ticking, burrows into his psyche, a sound not external but internal, gnawing at his thoughts, his very being, as if the boundaries between man and time have collapsed. The clock's beat is no longer a marker of the hours, but a harbinger of death itself, stalking the house and its inhabitants, claiming them one by one. Yes, and now, in the shadow of despair, Brian knows all too well what his grandfather once feared. Time, you see, is not a friend to the living. Death, that insidious force, circles ever-present, waiting as broken clocks echo their cursed rhythm through the halls. First, it claimed his grandfather, then his daughter Ruth, and finally Sherry, leaving Brian to ponder why the Reaper lingers so long. Why has he not yet claimed the final soul? Is it mercy or cruelty? No matter, for Brian waits, a willing sacrifice to the inevitable as the infernal tick-tock continues. Death's metronome guiding his every step toward oblivion. I do hope he doesn't dawdle too much. Time waits for no one after all.